Hello and welcome to FPLIQ. We're back after a short hiatus. We're back, recharged, refreshed, and ready to attack March Madness. Probably the most craziest time of the FPL season, where we're about to get a double, a blank with potential free hits coming out, and then wildcards out in 30. We're going to have like 3 game weeks of potential multiple chips coming out here, or at least I would predict 1 chip coming out for people, and we're all here for it. We are here to discuss the reasonings and our suggestions and our personal plans or suggestions for others about how we're going to attack this very volatile period of FPL with different views and ideas, and we always look at both sides of the argument. It's not us just telling you what to do, because that's pointless. And we're also not just sitting on the it's team dependent line as well. There'll be other reasonings to say, like, everything is team dependent when it comes on it, but we're not copping out, and we will look at both sides of the argument. But before we get into it, we'll say hello once again to the FPLIQ gents on the show. We'll start with Ryan. How you doing, buddy? How are you going?
Not too bad, not too bad. Like you said, it is business end of the season, with many managers playing chips left, right, and center, and also trying to catch mini leagues. I'm also on a chase to try and close down a mini league guy who it was 100 points at a game week 23 around, and now it's gone down to 69 at the moment. He's about to play his triple captaincy, I think, because he saved it up, didn't play it on Haaland. But he's also going to non-free hit in 29. So I'm most likely free hitting in 29. So that's where I think I'll have to make my gains. So we'll see.
And it is you just got to chip away at those kinds of those kind of leads, haven't you? And it's never over till it's over. And chip away, yeah. You like that pun, didn't you? That was good. TM Planner, how are we doing? How are you feeling?
Yeah, no, good. Yeah, my season has been like a yo-yo. So basically 2 reds, 2 green, 2 reds, 2 green, just like that all season. So yeah, I think I've just got my 2 greens in the last 2 weeks, so I'm fully expecting a red this week. But yeah, no, just super excited to be here talking to you guys. My strategy has sort of been flip-flopping between just going full circle in the past week or so. So yeah, hopefully having a chat tonight we can iron it out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, lucky for you, you're a yo-yo. I'm more like a bungee jump, where I've just gone down and up a bit and down again, and then someone's just cut the rope and I'm in free fall. But I'm hoping there's a trampoline at the bottom where I can bounce back just a little bit. Teacher Lucian, how you doing, bud? Feeling good?
Sputtering. Well, good evening, everybody. It's good to be back. Miss you, boys. Now, yeah, I've just checked my rank for the first time in a long while. I'm actually on a run of 11 out of 13 green arrows since the turn of the year, and my rank has gone from 4.8 million, and now I'm like 2.8 million. It's not good, guys. It's not good. I don't even know how to put it. Like, it's really pointless because the green arrows are so small and so underwhelming that it's that sort of season. That's how strong the template has been, because everyone knows about my crazy strategies. Yeah, so it's getting together eventually. I'll be happy with a 6-digit finish. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest shocks about your team is the fact that you are top of a head-to-head league. I think that's something that surprised me. Multiplayers as well, so but I think there's sometimes, we've discussed this before, like the fun in FPL, right? A head-to-head or private league with your friends where you're all in the millions but you're having a good time and it's close is much better than just copy and pasting other people's tactics and suggestions, right? That's where the fun is for FPL. So here is an agenda list. So we came up with the ideas and we've kind of split it between us this time, where Game Week 28 is Tien's more area that he's been focused on, because Tien, you were contemplating a 28 wildcard, but you went against that, right? So that's going to be that's an area that you've really focused on because you were going to do it. I've been very focused on free hits. I've done several posts about it. And Ryan's going to be covering the 30 to 33 period for wildcarding. And Lucian has a tick-attack tactics and some routes that we're going to discuss as well. So on here you can see the agenda that we're going to do and what people will be potentially doing over those times. So I think we could just go straight into Tien and his idea for wildcard in 28, which I'm 1974 has said in the chat his wildcard is active right now, and it is a popular move. I think Andy FPL mode has done the same. One of the very few sort of people are still on my timeline. So I do think there are some popular players and content creators that have pulled the trigger on a 28 wild card. So Tien, you want to take away the first slide then about the drafts and sort of the reasons behind this sort of plan?
Yeah, so with the wildcard 28 now, obviously the game week is now, so I think you know most people should be able to look at their teams and see whether a wildcard is something that would fit their team and their strategy. Now, obviously, we would assume that most people will still have the wildcard, the free hit, and many will still have the bench boost left as well. Now, some people might have the triple captain as well, but that's probably more the minority. So the way I think about is, if you look at your team right now and you see whether or how many key players that you can get to, and that might be something that you could judge whether a wildcard is needed. So in my opinion, because it's a double game week with Bournemouth and Luton, so most people will have Solanke. I think every engaged manager will have Solanke. And the second most popular option from Bournemouth would be Neto, the goalkeeper. From Luton, I think Morris and Doughty will be the two most popular options. So those are the four key players from the two teams that double in 28. And then out of the single game week players, we have the Arsenal boys, so Saka and Gabriel. And then we have Son from Spurs and Bowen from West Ham. And then obviously don't forget the sort of very popular picks for a long time now, Cole Palmer and Ollie Watkins. So in my opinion, those are the players that you should be having in your team, or should be aiming to get those in the team. And if you are way short of that, then maybe perhaps you should think about the wildcard 28. The other thing that you can think about when you're doing the wildcard 28 is because it's and we this next slide we'll see a draft and then we'll talk about the pros and cons a bit more. But the most obvious things would be the book transfers that you will have to make, because the key thing with the wildcard 28 is you aim to have as many doublers as possible, but obviously keeping in mind that the blank game week in 29, you should aim to get enough players so that you don't have to play the free hit. Because obviously it's possible that you play the wild card and play the free hit in 29, but I think that's probably a bit counterproductive. So try to set up for the double and the blank as well. And for those reasons, I think it'll be extremely difficult to keep certain players like Haaland, for example, or any Man Cities for that matter. And obviously, I don't think you can get Mo Salah in just yet without sacrificing either 28 or 29 as well. So those are the moves that you'll probably have to make straight away after the blank. So in 30 and 31, you're probably looking at bringing Salah and Haaland back in. And then in 29, there's one move that he can make in order to field 10 or 11 players. So those are the kind of book transfers that I think most wildcarders will need to make in the very near future. So if you can go to the next slide, Rob.
Gotcha.
We'll just look at a draft that I put together. Now, obviously, the key players are there. Uh, so in this draft, you can see that they've got Neto in goal, and Flecken is the other goalkeeper that I have. Now, obviously, you can keep Areola if you want to, because you want a keeper that play in 29. The reason why I like Flecken is because Flecken actually rotates very well with Neto. So Neto have obviously the double now, playing in 29, and he has, I think, 3 more pretty decent fixtures after that. And then it's switch over to Brentford. So Brentford has really nice fixtures from game week 33. So you can potentially just rotate those two. In defense, I've got Doughty, Gabriel, and Zabania.
Yeah, the Bournemouth player. Yeah.
Yeah, probably butchered that name. And then in midfield, I've got Saka, Son, Bowen, and Palmer. And up top, Solanke, Morris, and Watkins. And then on the bench, I've got Bailey, Udoki, and Regulon. So basically, obviously, there's a few players there that he can play around with. But the idea is to have a full squad with very few rotation or injury worries, because you would basically sort out all your problems in the team. As Stupinian or Taylor or whoever that are potentially injured or rotation risk. In this draft, you have 5 doublers for 28, and then in 29 you should have 10 players, quite decent players with a free transfer. So the free transfer in 29 could be Solanke to either Ivan Toney or Muniz, depending on how much money you want to leave aside for Salah and Haaland in 30 and 31. The other pros with the 28 wildcard is, obviously you have massive advantages over the field, because most people will have 3 or fewer doublers in 28. And a lot of people, if they don't play the free hit, they will have probably 9 or fewer players in 29 as well. So should be some points to be gained there. And you can save the free hit for the double game week 34 or 37, depending on how your transfers leading up to that. And potentially you can getting ahead of the 30 or 31 wildcard template as well. Now, obviously, there are some cons with this strategy. At the moment, we still don't know what 34 and 37 will look like. So there's uncertainty there. And potentially you have to take hits during that period with only the free hit. You do have several book transfers, as I mentioned earlier. So if there are injuries or other problems, then obviously you'll be taking hits as well. You are going to be pretty slow to get back to the double or treble City, Arsenal, and Liverpool, just because you end up with Bournemouth and Luton players and Aston Villa's players as well after 30. So obviously you slowly transfer them out to convert them to Man City and Liverpool and Arsenal, but it takes time. And finally, it's you're a long way away from 37 if you've got the bench boost left, and that is when you want to play it. It's a long way to go, so you have to carry a lot of players on the bench or making transfers to fit your bench up to the bench boost. So that's potentially a big downside as well. So yeah, I think it's a viable strategy for certain teams, especially if your team is not well set up for 28 and 29. It's trying to get the points straight away, and then deal with 34 and 37 with free transfers and the free hit later.
So I just realised I was muted. I think it's a really, really well thought out plan, and I think all of them are. I think every plan has its merits. If people have sat there and thought through all the pros and cons and made the decision, I can agree and disagree, but I do think that it's not a bad plan. It's not a bad idea. So just my only comment for this, because you've covered everything so well, is the biggest thing for me is that it does book in too many transfers and it does take too long. Like, people wildcard in 30 or 31, like even in 30 because Arsenal play against City, but when people wildcard in 30, 31, they're going to have triple City or double City, right? They're going to have triple Arsenal, or at least double Arsenal, maybe double Liverpool. Like, they're going to have all of these players and not have to think about game week 29. And I think that's the thing for me. You're bringing in three. Now, Bournemouth are potentially very likely to get a double in game week 34, so that's another positive. But I'm looking at this and I'm seeing a Brentford, 3 Bournemouth, 2 Luton, 2 Brentford, and I'm just like, it just doesn't sell me. So the biggest thing for me is just, we've talked before about quality over quantity, and it just feels like for the sake of having a couple more doublers, and I'm only interested in Bournemouth if I'm honest. I've got Doherty, but Bournemouth is the big one for me on this. And avoiding just using the free hit in 29, I just don't. I think it's just too early. But that's the biggest thing for me. I do see the merit in it, and if your team was a mess or you really wanted to save the free hit, which I don't know what the big save is going to be for, then I think that's it for me. You covered everything excellently. It's just, for me, it's too far away from Salah. Like, I'm going to have to restructure my whole team to have Saka, Salah, Haaland, and Son back inside it. And if you wildcard now, you can't do that without hits or transfers already booked in. And with the way this season's gone, I'm having 2 flags a week in my 11. Like, I can't say, oh, in 31 I'm going to bring Haaland back. Well, we're in game week 28. In 31, Morris could be back on the bench. Doherty could be injured. Saka's out for a couple of games. Palmer's, I don't know, got a stomach ache. Or I don't know, but who knows, right? Ryan, what's your feeling on the wildcard 28 plan?
Well, I guess there's a double-edged sword in every plan, to be honest. So it depends on like what. Again, we've thrown the old cliche already out of the window in terms of team dependence. We're not going to use that here. But I guess if you feel like you can get an advantage over the rest of the competition, because there are 2 cases to play the wildcard in 28. One, you're either not set up for, like, your squad is not ready for 29, and you are in a situation where you have to choose between free hitting or not free hitting, and maybe you just go, all right, I do not want to free hit in 29 because the upside for 29 is potentially lower, and you go, I'd rather use that on 34 or 37. So that could be one of the reasons, because even my squad, if I look at it right now, I have to take a couple hits to field like at least 9 to 10 players, which is about 8 to 12 points of hits. And I'm like, okay, that kind of doesn't make sense for me. So in that situation, people could be like, okay, I rather wildcard. Or in my situation, I'm like, I might as well just play the free hit in like 29. So it completely depends. Now, you obviously will most likely get a decent sized chunked green arrow this week because you'll have more double game week players than the rest of the competition. The question is, come game week 30, 31, in terms of navigating and transitioning, how well are you ready to like transition towards 30, 31? Now, I was discussing this yesterday as well with one of my podcast mates. He's doing a game week 28 wildcard and a game week 29 free hit, which is slightly different to what I would expect most game week 28 wildcarders to do. But in that specific situation, he's not loading up on the players that we have here in terms of the Lutons, the Brentfords, and everything. So that's also another specific scenario that managers could probably look at in terms of if they want to try. But then his squad was in a mess kind of going into this, so he kind of had to do it because of that. So there are like reasons for wildcarding as well now. So I don't mind it, but it's we won't know the true results of it until a couple game weeks later. The whole reason that I'm saving it is because FA Cup information. It seems like a very straightforward draw, but upsets can happen. Add to that, there's an international break after 29 as well, which we should kind of consider. Injuries could happen, so that's also something to kind of keep in mind for, which you mentioned, Rob. So I don't know. I'm happy to wait and delay it, but I don't mind people doing it now as well. But yeah, it's not the most appealing double, but I can see why people will be doing it.
Yeah. So I have to unmute stuff because she's sat here. That's the thing about the international break as well. Like big things. Like I've got Kelleher now, right? I don't want to butcher his name. The Liverpool goalkeeper. And Allison is supposed to be out longer than we thought, but apparently not season ending. But he's in my team. Nick Pope is on the verge of a potential comeback, and a lot of us have got Dubravka. There's just a lot of things like that I think there's a big gap between like 28 and 31, that going into that final stretch where we know what the FA Cup run's going to be, and teams are pretty much going to be once a week, so we're not going to have these multiple games situation where they're going to probably get injured more often. So yeah, I think there's some good points. Lucian, how are you feeling about? Oh, just before, just writing about the point again, the team dependent thing. We said before that wildcards can be used to get out of situations. So that's an example where if you sat there, there's nothing wrong with wildcard 28 free hit 29. There's nothing wrong with bringing in a. There's nothing wrong with bringing in a bunch of players in 28 wildcard, because I don't think maybe a 28 wildcard, if you're free hitting in 29, is going to be that much different from a 30-31. Right? If you're not too big on City, say you only want Haaland, and you're gonna wildcard. I don't think a 28 wildcard without 29 on your mind is going to be too much different from a 30-31, right? Because your friend is he going to probably have a couple Liverpool?
Yeah, so he had like Darwin and Salah already in the current draft, but he was thinking of also like one suggestion that was made was go for Bowen this week and then move to Salah, which Tian has also added in his slide as a potential move because it's a tough game for Salah this week. But his situation is he can still kind of load up on Bournemouth and Luton, but probably not to the extent where those who need it for 29 will also do. So that's the only, I guess, advantage to it.
Yeah, he can't attack this double really. But again, we've said before, the thing is, quality over quantity is what we always say. But Bournemouth's potential for me is just so big. They're against the two worst teams. So anyway, yeah. Lucian, what are your thoughts on the wildcard 28 plan?
Well, at first glance, when you look at the draft that Tian has put up there, it is immediately unappealing. Not because of the sheer number of doublers, but because of the lack of Man City. I think Wildcard 28 is really specifically for people who dislike Man City for the next 3 fixtures. I mean, you guys have talked about content creators who are on a Wildcard 28 plan. Those guys basically are preaching right now that I prefer X and Y player over Haaland for the next 3 fixtures specifically. So, I do disagree in the sense that I'm not with them, with you guys actually. I do disagree because I want to bring forth the opinion that you're not actually booking transfers. I feel that with a wildcard 28, you either wildcard 28 and do nothing for 29. You intentionally not buy anybody and hold your squad for the 29, and it gives you 2 free transfers to bring in whatever City player whenever you like, whoever you like, over the next few games. And if not, you'd be playing the wildcard 28 and then free hitting in 29. I mean, I do feel that Wildcard 28's hidden strength is that you can use your free hit for any double that pops up after 29, because your Wildcard 28 saves you potentially on the 29 free hit. So imagine, right? You're saving transfers and you're using them like for the 30 to 33 period, where you're using maybe 2 free transfers to drop it on a random double that appears in 31 and 32. Because, right, we have to keep in mind that yes, 34 and 37 are the big double game weeks, but once in a while, there will be games that might drop into 31 and 32 depending on who goes through to the semi-finals of the FA Cup. Because right now, quarterfinals clash with EPL, and that's why 29 is a big blank. But when semi-finals clash with FA Cup, we're going to have some teams with a blank game week in the semis. I think it's 32 or 33 or something like that. And that's going to cause more fixtures to move into other game weeks. And that's where the 2 free transfers really come to the fore. And in fact, you can save your free hit for like the 34, where the semi big double is. And yeah, that's what I find the strength of the wildcard 28 is the lack of transfers and the openness to allow you to invest in extra Chelsea, for example, who are owed 2 games. But yeah, otherwise, I think a big plus as well is that this wildcard 28 draft is painfully cheap, right? It's got a lot of money in the bank, isn't it? So I mean, you can buy literally anybody, and I think that's power in itself. Doesn't have to be Haaland immediately.
Yeah.
Just
Oh, go on.
just to add, the semis of the FA Cup final will be during game week 34, so double game week 34. So you will have blanks and doubles during that week.
Yep. So again, another plus for the free hit in 34. So we'll stick with Lucian because I believe this is your slide about. This one's yours about navigating double game week 28. This is without the wild card being played. So we're going in like game week order. So if you're not using a wild card, like I think most people are not, this is your point about. Is this also navigating double game week 28 without the free hit?
Yes, this is navigating okay, so yes and no. I have accounted for scenarios where you play the free hit on 29 as well as playing the free hit on 29 itself. So I've accounted for both cases. But this will be the route that majority of us will be going, hence naming it Route 1. Are we on the next slide yet?
Yep, it's already there.
Okay, nice. Yes. So the idea of Route 1 is that it is simple. Everyone is going to be doing it, right? I think the first temptation, or at least, if we have been sensitive to whatever people have been discussing on social media, blank game week 29, right? We've seen this a long time coming. So it's not as if, suddenly you go, oh, there's so many blanks, right? We've been following FA Cup games and replays so closely to, marvel at Ben Krelin's spreadsheet odds and the percentages of teams becoming blank. And really, doomsday has happened and all the favorites have gone through. So at this stage, right, we've been prepared for this for so long that some engaged managers probably have invested in the likes of Tony. I've bought Regulon myself. Some of us have Flecken, since they are late first wild card or something. So, most of us are already quite savvy to this, and some of us would even have punted on Doughty, who has returned nothing so far besides, what was it, 9 chances created against some team, Rob, and a whole bunch of others. Oh wait, he got an assist, right? Against somebody last game week. Yeah, against Villa. Hey, that's good. And so Route 1 involves the decision between free hitting in 29 and not free hitting in 29. But the idea here, first and foremost, is to empathize with what majority of managers are going through. So assuming that, the casual manager isn't that privy to the blank game week, what I have here on this slide is basically I've compiled the top ownership of the top 10K and basically made a team out of it, just to give everyone a good picture of how many players a typical manager would have in blank game week 29. And there we have it. In blank game week 29, they will have Son, Watkins, Areola, 2 more free transfers. That's all we've got. So, par for the course is 5 free transfers. 5 players with a single game week fixture. And if you have bonus players like Luton players or Brentford players, then so be it. Full credit to you. Yes, so that sets the premise for our decision-making process, which should be in the next slide. With that? All right, nice. So, yes, so this is yes, I've included my favorite memes in this, as well as some graphics that Rob has very hardworkingly put together in pre-season, and I'm not here to plug our pre-season content, but look at how beautiful it is. Okay, anyway, so okay, first and foremost, I'm sure everyone has, or everyone listening to this channel would have access to websites like FPL.team that can, plan far ahead into blank game week 29 just to see what your team looks like. If you are happy with it, if you're happy with the 5 to 6 players with a single fixture, then you buy Luton. Because realistically, you buy Luton for the next 2 game weeks with their double and then perhaps that home game against Forest, and that's about it. You are basically trying to wild card somewhere in there, right? Between 30 and 33, just to set yourself up for the 34-37 combo. Now, if you do not like the look of your team in blank game week 29, right? If you look at other teams and they own Son, Madison, and Richarlison for some reason, right? And you're like, I want that. I want that. So then you buy Bournemouth players, right? You buy Bournemouth players because, well, Bournemouth blank in 29, and they have arguably the best fixtures in town. So you buy Bournemouth players now with your free transfers. You take the free hit in 29. And after the free hit, whoa, look at Bournemouth's fixtures. Everton, Palace, Fulham, and Man United. Solanke guaranteed a haul against Harry Maguire right there. And I mean, that really is it, because you can wildcard anytime you want, right? As long yes, you lose the power of the free hit, but Route 1 basically involves flexibility, very similar to Wildcard 28, while keeping your existing squad. So that's how it is. That's how it is. And yeah, as we segue into the next slide, I think Rob, you can talk about the pros and cons of what a beautiful free hit 29 team looks like.
Yeah, just before we move on, any comments on non-free? Just a quick. Who is not free hitting in 29 from us four?
I'm 50-50.
So Lucian's not decided. Tien, are you free hit or no?
I am 60-40.
For
So
yes?
yeah, I for no.
That still didn't sound like
I'm
60-40. That still sounds like 50-50.
yeah, no. The reason is like whatever transfers I make tomorrow is gonna be deciding factor. But the reason why I'm sort of 60-40 or 50-50 is because I still want to be flexible, right? I don't want to commit too early. Even if I make one transfer tomorrow, that still opens up for me the two possibilities. I'm still undecided because there's the pros and cons for both, and I think maybe you can talk in the next slide as well, and then when Ryan talk about the wildcard 30-31, yeah, I'm looking at these two pathways that we can go, right? And for my team, I could go either way.
I like how you're flexible, and I've been locked in since like game week 20. Game week 20. I'm free hitting in 29, guys. I'm telling you now. Ryan, are you free hit?
Yes, I most likely am free
Most
hitting.
likely. Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
2 on the fence and 2. We'll say 90% sure because you never know what happens, right? So similar to what Tien's saying, like after his transfers this game week, he could be 70-30 no, and then 2 injuries come along and he's free hitting in 29, right? Like it's still open for a lot of people, but it is closed. I feel like no free hit in 29 is closed to me, and I've done that on purpose. It's not like by accident. Like I've not just clicked on plan FPL to game week 29 and go, oh my god, I've only got 3 players. I knew it was coming. Like I think a lot of us will. So I have spoken a lot about free hit game week 29, and I have looked on both sides. I did a big post that was a bit popular on Twitter. I had a lot of people giving suggestions against it and for it. Some people just hurling general abuse, as is social media. But that's the way it is. So I'll just run through what I'm not saying this is my free hit team, but I did put one together that could be 3-4-3-3-5-2, and just to give people a suggestion on what it would be. So it would be Flecken and Reguilon away to Burnley. I've got Porro at home to Fulham. I think it's at home, right? Yeah, Porro at home to Fulham, and Doherty against Forest. Bailey, Son, Maddison, Bowen, Watkins, Tony, and Muniz is in there for Fulham because he's in really good form. But that could be like a Wonyi from Nottingham Forest, right? Just as an example. With a full bench of Leno, Gibbs White, Alex Moreno, and Castagna. I just put a plain bench on there. The money for this is, I can't spend it. Like you can't run out of money on this free hit. So any player that you want, you can get them. Like, and you'll still have like 5 million in the bank. So the pros for this one, first, it's a full squad, no matter what, right? It's you will get 11. You choose 15, but you will get an 11 unless there's an absolute nightmare, which is going to affect everyone else more still than it is going to affect you. You should have a full squad, no worries. A lot of people saving the free hit for double game week 34, but it's massively underwhelming. And you can dead end into 34, but you've got Newcastle, maybe you'll have some interest. Bournemouth, you'll have them already because that you've been building for this double game week in 28. Sheffield United, you're not going to touch with a barge pole. The Crystal Palace, you might get one player in, but you're not going to rip your team apart for one Crystal Palace double game week. Players also in blank game week 29. Players blank. Now, I know I'm not trying to sound obvious, but what I mean is your player will get 0. A lot of people who are free hitting game week 34 are going to take out players with a single game week who are good. Like, I think, is it Arsenal against Fulham that game week? I'll have to double check. I do have the season ticket here. Sorry, Wolves. Arsenal have Wolves in 34. Villa have Bournemouth. Brentford have Luton, Chelsea have Brighton, Liverpool have Crystal Palace. Sorry, Fulham. Liverpool have Fulham. There's a lot. The people you're taking out as good single game weeks who can get points. We just saw in a really let down double game week for City and Liverpool that a single game week player can even outscore them. So why am I going to do double Crystal Palace for those fixtures and take out a Saka against Wolves, a Salah against Crystal Palace? It just doesn't make any sense to me to do that. So in 29, your players will blank. But in 34, all the good players that you've got, all those City and Liverpool and Arsenal players, they're all going to still play and have decent fixtures too. So are you going to be taking them out just for the sake of poorer double game weeks? Another point for game week 29 is the combination of players gives you that differential. So what I mean by that is a lot of people are going to have a Tony, a Son, a Porro, for example. But combining those players is what gives you a differential, what gives you that rank boost. And people as well, they keep saying, oh, I'll get to 6, I'll get to 7, I'll get to 8 players. But those 8 players are a Barkley. Like they're not a good 8 players. They're not a good 7 players. And they're also not taking into account the hits that they've taken to get to where they are and after where they're going to go. So yeah, I'm sat there with 8 players, but my 15 is the best it could be on paper. Your 8 might have like 3 players who are rubbish, who are terrible, who you absolutely don't want. And also combining the players, you might have Tony, you might have Son, you might have Maddison, but you don't have all three. Or you don't have two of those three. I have all of those three. So the combination, I think, is a really, really big one. And also not taking any hits before or after it. So I've got 8 players and I can get just below the average score, but you've booked in the transfers and you've taken the hits to get to that average score in one game week. And FPL isn't a one game week score. It's a 38 season score, right? Another reason I want to point out as well is not losing your team value. So a lot of talk this week has been about Haaland out for non-free hitters, Haaland out and Morris in, because he's got 3 games and Haaland has 1. I understand the logic, but you will lose at least like 0.3 million. And I'm a points over money guy, and I get it. But if you also take Foden out, and you've probably got like 0.3, how are you going to get these back in on a wild card on top of you? If you take Saka out, I'm a late person for Saka. I only got him like 2 weeks ago. If you've had Saka for multiple weeks, how much are you going to lose on him? 0.5? 0.6? And all that adds up. So by the time you wildcard, you can't have the team that you want because you've lost all the value that you've been building up because you took them out because you didn't free hit. Also, a point that I didn't put on here, but it wasn't a combining. Oh, it is there. I just missed it. When people say about they've been preparing to not free hit in 29, I think they've been ridiculously lucky. Because that means that you have got players in your team after game week 9 that you're stuck with unless you're wildcard. And you've, for several weeks, had to bring in players for game week 29. So people will sit there and say, game week 29, rubbish teams, don't want to do it. I'm free hitting. I'll only have those guys for 1 week. People have been building for several game weeks just to get to 8 players from those teams that they're criticizing. Game week 29 is garbage. The teams are rubbish. I don't want those players. But you've just spent 3-4 weeks bringing those players in slowly, whereas I'm just going to dip in and dip out. So I think it's a little bit weird when people say about that point. But yeah, and the reason why I say I think they're lucky, because if they've been building up for this blank game week, then they've not attacked the other doubles unless they're taking massive hits. Like, I knew I was free hitting in 29, so I attacked the City and Liverpool double game week, and I've also got 4 players in the up and coming double game week, and I've taken like a -4, and that's it. People who are fine to not free hit in 29 unless they've played a wild card, which is a separate conversation which we had before. If people have just done transfers to 29, unless they've taken massive hits, they cannot have attacked the Liverpool double game week or the City double game week or the Bournemouth Luton double game week. They can't. It's impossible because the amount of transfers between game week, what was it? Game week 26 was a double for Liverpool or 25? 25, right? 25 to 29. There's no way that they've done that. It's not possible. And people who replied on the comments said, "Oh yeah, I had 1 Liverpool player, or I had 1 or 2 City players, and that was it." And I think that they got off lucky. I mean, if Salah would have played that second game, could have been mayhem. Darwin off at half-time. Diogo Jota was before half-time with that injury. I think they've got massively lucky. And they still have to sit there through this double game week. They can't have 3 Bournemouth players because Bournemouth blank in 29. So what are they going to... And they're going to sell Solanke and lose value on him as well to get him back on a wild card just so they can have Tony. So they're all the reasons why I just think, for me, game week 29, free hit 29 was always just a really simple thing where my rank has gone down, but I feel I've been more unlucky this season than in others in terms of injuries. But I feel like that double could have gone real crazy for City and Liverpool, and it didn't. And then the blank, I was fine with the blank. People who don't free hit in 29 might not have been fine in 26 because they must have kept Spurs players who blanked, right? So there's a lot of points as to why I just think free hit 29 was just a simple thing. I don't think there's value in 34. So you're saving it for 37, but that's the perfect time for me, and I don't have it. That's the perfect time for me to bench boost. And a free hit in 37 is better than 34. 34 for me is worthless. 37, you can have the best. But by the time you get to 37, and Liverpool and City and Arsenal, whoever, they all double, we're all going to have them anyway from our wild card. So what you're saving your free hit for? I'm taking out players that will for sure get 0. If you free hit in 34, you're going to take players out with a single game week who will score points. And in 37, you can free hit in your City and your Liverpool players, but what's the point? You'll already have them. You're going to be in 37. You're going to have 2-3 City, Liverpool, Arsenal players anyway. The ones that are against this is that point is so against the free hit 29 is the free hit's gone, right? So you can't use it in that double game week. If you for some reason want to get 3, let's say Newcastle, Bournemouth, and United double, right? You could free hit and bring in those players, massive differential. And the other argument that people kept saying is, oh, I've got those players that you've got, but they didn't have all of them. But a lot of them would say, oh, you're going to free hit, but look at my team. I've got Son, Bowen, Reguilon, Flecken. I've got most of the players that you've got, but they just wouldn't have all of them. So, yeah, I felt pretty obviously strongly about, I think free hit 29 was just a really simple thing to do. Now, Tien's not got his bench boost because he's used it as well. So that would make a free hit in my opinion, a free hit in 37 for Tien a great time to use it because City might have won the title and be in the final of the Champions League and they're going to rest all the players. We could get a team leak with all the information for that game week and he's there with a free hit and he's just like bish bash bosh, got the best team. But I think if you've got your bench boost, I've seen a lot of people recently itching again to use it. I think if you've kept it this far, I mean, I use it in game week 1. If you've kept it this far now and you're looking to use it in a single game week, what's the point? What is the point? Just save it for 34 or 37 because you're almost there. And 37 is after your wild card, after your second wild card. So if you just use it in 37, you're going to have 15 players playing twice because you'll have just wild carded, unless you do a really bad wild card and don't give yourself a little bit of a bench. But yeah. Anyway, that's my opinion on the free hit 29. So we'll just go around in order. So Ryan, your thoughts, additions for game week 29 free hit.
So my reasoning for why I will most likely free hit or the way I've got to it. Now I made a gamble on Chelsea losing to Leeds, and I loaded up on Arsenal because Arsenal had a good run, and I didn't want to put myself in a position where I was like trying to like bring players in to try and avoid not free hitting. So I was going to make a gamble. If Chelsea lost, all right, I don't have a free hit. If Chelsea won, then I had a free hit. If Chelsea lost, I don't have a free hit. And obviously Chelsea won. So I have triple Arsenal. I've got my points from triple Arsenal so far because they keep smashing teams left, right, and center. But at the same time, now I'm in a situation where I could do a -8 and get to like 9 players in game week 29, and I'll probably cover all the important players. But then at the same time, that's a -8 plus another 2 players worth of points that I could have if I was to free hit. And I think that the other reason I'm looking at it is from a mini league point of view. So now I started this when we started the pod. I mentioned about how I was chasing down a mini league of like 100 plus to now 69. Now the guy on top of that mini league is most likely not free hitting. So I can kind of predict what his team is going to be in 29 because there's not too much he's going to change. So this is where I can kind of use that free hit to go slightly different and place my bets and hope that I kind of make gains differently. So I'm approaching it from that point of view as well in terms of a mini league perspective, in terms of trying to cut down a lead, because trying to even steal at this point like 69 to 70 points is quite a lot. So you kind of have to take a few risks here and there, and that is one of my calculated risks for the reasons of playing free hit in 29. Now, I still think I understand the reasons, and I think there is kind of merit also in a 34 free hit or even a 37 free hit or even a 34 bench boost, 37 bench boost. I know that there are others who are looking at those options as well. And I think we as well, even if we were to, let's say, free hit in 29 and wildcard 30-31, we're also going to kind of get to a position where, depending on how the FA Cup fixtures go, we might also still have to kind of like take a hit or two later down the line to try and get specific players for those doubles. Now, best case scenario, there's massive F Cup upsets, the likes of Newcastle beat City, United in some miracle beat Liverpool. And then that way, instead of Liverpool and City like doubling in 37, they tend to double in 34. Then you're like, yes. You're like, wildcard 30-31, I'm going to load up on all these good teams and I'm just going to benefit. And then when it comes to GAMEWEEK 37, I'll think about United. And because at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm chasing mini leagues and I want to take some risk. That's like punty time of the season. So I'm like, okay, I don't mind it. Compared to at 34, if like United and Newcastle double, you're like, I don't really want these players. Lucian's like looking at me, you really going to double up your team with Man United players? And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't really want them. So maybe in that specific situation, you go, okay, maybe I want a free hit for that because I don't want to own these players for too long. And I know, like, whenever it gets to a double game week with questionable teams, TN always pulls out the Dennis tweet: shit players from shit teams are going to be shit. So there will be a scenario where we play the free hit in 29 and we still might end up taking a hit or two to try and bring in, even though we still think they're pretty bad. We kind of have to somewhat chase the doubles. But I do agree with you, Rob, in terms of they like how 25, how the single game week has smashed it. The same could apply to 34 as well. Single game week teams do have some good fixtures. And even though we may free hit that specific week, or for those who are looking to free hit that specific week, you're most likely not going to like full on 22 players in your starting 11. You're going to mix it up with doubles and single game because, or you're going to ride your luck and go, I'm going full out on double. I'm like all the double game because put on the Crystal Palace, put on the Newcastle, Manchester United, Sheffield United, put them all on and then hope for the best. But yeah, there is merit to both sides. And I think, again, it's very hard to tell, right? You can't tell after 1 week whether this was the right decision or not. I guess we'll have to see, like, compare across weeks to see what end of the day what strategy worked. I know you're on mute.
I'm back. Tien?
Nope, still no sound.
Okay.
It's on the video.
Okay.
Hello? Go to TN.
Looks like we'll have to switch on our streams to hear what he has to say. Or is it my turn? Did you point at me?
All right, Lucian, anything to say?
Yeah, alright, cool.
TN, anything to say?
Oh, it's Tien's
Oh,
turn.
he's
Okay.
on. I can hear him on YouTube though, but
Oh, Lucian, you go.
Okay, I'll go.
Hello?
That I've made. I do believe that people on our stream are the engaged type that probably have a couple of Bournemouth players already. I mean, if you ask me, the only factor that would sway people into playing the free hit in 29 would be captaincy choice. I think a Spurs player is far and away the best choice. I mean, there's Tony against Brentford. Tony against Burnley. I think that's also a thing. But man, it's really slim pickings here. I mean, beyond that, I guess Ollie Watkins is a safe cap against West Ham. So, really, like if I think the idea here is that a lot of us are gonna have Haaland, and a lot of us are gonna have Haaland's sitting on that 0.2 million profit, by the way. So good luck cashing back in on that. A lot of us are also gonna have Watkins. So really the question is, can you access Ivan Toney or Heung-min Son using one free transfer in 29? I do believe that everyone else is a moot point because, like, personally, I don't even think Ivan Toney would explode that big. Really, I mean, Okay, wait. I'm saying the word I mean too many times. So I'm really going to make this concise. Number one, identify the key threats Game Week 29 has against you. In my mind, Ivan Toney, all the Spurs midfielders, and Ollie Watkins for whoever that doesn't have him. Everyone else is basically irrelevant. So, um, you know, pick your poison. If you feel that they won't all score double digits at the same time, then leave it. Leave it alone. Buy whoever you can, buy whoever you can afford, and just save the free hit for 34. Because I mean, you just look at the fixtures that are owing in 34, right? You've got what, Man City against Brighton. You've got like massive fixtures that can drop on 34, where you can just play your free hit and just move on. That 34 free hit, especially with blanks incoming, is going to be far more valuable if you can afford to not free hit in 29. And that's why I'm on the fence personally, because I right now have, I think, 5-6 players. So with a free transfer, that's perhaps 7. So I'm okay with that. I'm really am okay with that. Like, to the point that I might contemplate not even getting Dominic Solanke this week because I already have 3 Bournemouth players. Yeah, just so that I have 2 free transfers for this blank, and yeah, I just move on. So uh I'm gonna cop out and say team dependent, but I am going to draw a line in the sand. If you can get, right, remember the 5 key threats I identified: Tony, Son. I don't even think Madison's a threat right now. Tony, Son, Watkins,
Owen.
maybe Richarlison if he's fit. Just these 4, right? If you can get to 2 out of those 4, maybe 3 out of those 4 to be comfortable for game week 29, then don't play the free hit. Everyone else is irrelevant. Everyone's gonna have Areola. Everyone's gonna have, multiple Luton defenders or whatnot. I don't even think the Spurs fullbacks are relevant right now. That's how I see the landscape.
Yeah, so I mentioned just then that I was sort of 60-40 no. So 60 no to 40 yes. I might have been converted to the other way around. So maybe 60 yes and 40 no. Because I do like the fact that so I think there's a question just earlier from Carsten. So yeah, so like, should I take a -8 to have 9 players in 29? Right? I'm in a very similar position because I wasn't actively planning for 29. Like, I transfer in like Arsenal players and instead of like a Regulon, for example, those kind of things. So I have 5. If I want to get to 9 in 29, it will be a -12, and that might be too much. Now it can work, but just one more injuries and the whole thing will be just like thrown out of the window. And then that's I think that's probably the reason why I haven't made the transfer for this game week, to lock myself in either way. And the points about, like, not only you are taking hits to fill 8 or 9 players in 29, the fact that you are selling really good players, players that you have built valued in to get, like, Morris or whoever, and then have to buy like Haaland back, with 0.3 million more. They do add up pretty quickly. So which I agree completely. So yeah, so I'm slightly leaning towards free hit 29 now, and we're gonna touch on it in a bit. But with the free hit 29, and I'd encourage people to look at their team and think about it as well. If you are free hitting 29, try to be flexible with your wildcard as well. Don't lock yourself in wildcarding 30 or 31, because there is real value in trying to navigate to 34 and then wildcard out of it, especially if you got the bench boost left. Because wildcarding closer to the bench boost is much better, and I think it's very viable. Obviously, depending on how the fixtures land with the FA Cup quarterfinals, but it's quite plausible to navigate to 34 with a free transfer and maybe a hit or two, and then you really maximize the wild card and the bench boost. In the last 4 or 5 game weeks of the season, you could really go big. Being flexible is a key here. And at the moment, myself, I'm still flexible. I haven't locked myself in at all in terms of when I'll use my free hit and wild card. So -8 to get 9 players, that's not a simple answer. It depends on who those 8 players are or 9 players are. If they include Taylor and Pedro Porro, for example, or Richarlison, those are sort of injured players that we don't know whether they're going to come back or not. Then probably free hit is a better answer. And also think about the transfer you make this game week and obviously after as well, because you got to think about the transfers in and transfer out on either side of the blank.
Yeah, I think in that situation, most people would be wildcarding after. But then you ask yourself, you're going to take a -8 and then wildcard. Like, just not even to get to 11, just to get to like 8. I just don't see the value in it at all. But there you go. So I think the next point we go on then is after game week 29. And it's the route of the game week 30-31 wildcard and drafts. I've already pretty much set in the free hit 29, and I'm also pretty much setting game week 30 or 31 wildcard. Essentially, a 31 wildcard will just bypass Arsenal against Manchester City. But aside from that, if you're not, and this is another thing as well, if you're not free hitting in 29, then you will probably have to wildcard in 30 or 31. Like you have to. Like your team's full of Luton and Bournemouth and Brentford players and so on. But for us who are free hitting in 29, we've still got our Liverpool and City and Chelsea and Bournemouth or whatever players, right? And I don't have to free hit in 30 or 31 or 32. I don't have to because I've still got all the players that you're going to wildcard back in immediately anyway. So a plan, which we'll talk later, is the Tiki-Taka plan. But that's for later. But for this one, Ryan is going to take away potential 30 to 31 wildcard drafts.
Yep. Okay, so game week 30 wildcard draft. Now, let me caveat by saying building a wildcard draft for game week 30 or 31 is not as easy when you don't know what is going to happen in 29. So I've had to make assumptions based on odds and everything, that so and so will beat so and so in the FA Cup, and this is kind of what we're expecting. Add to that, we don't know if injuries also will affect this, so keep in mind that is also not considered in this draft. So let's start with game week 30. Now, in game week 30, I've got Petrovic in goal alongside Dubravka. The reasonings for those two was Petrovic, obviously, with the multiple doubles in like 35, 36, somewhere around there, maybe 37 as well. So we're playing the fixtures with that. And Dubravka, because there's a potential chance that Newcastle could double in 34. I would have liked Kelleher as an option, but we don't know how long he's going to be out for. And add to that, I didn't want to go Kelleher and Dubravka because there's any chance that there's a high chance that Pope could come back as well, and Alisson could come back, and then you'll be with two keepers, and you'll be like, both of them now don't play. So I didn't want to take that risk on that. In defense, I've gone Gusto, Gabriel, and I've gone Udogi. The reasoning for Udogi was I just kept looking and I couldn't figure out a defender that I wanted for that third spot who was good for that specific.
I have Van der Ven in that for the Spurs for the start is fine and later is bad, but I was Van der Ven and you got Udogi.
Yep.
So, yeah.
There you go. So I racked my brain, I was thinking of this third defender. I just looked at everything possible. So it's very hard to tell what's going to happen, but that's why I went with Udogi, just because of Like that fixture in Luton is good. West Ham is not too bad, and then Forest also is not too bad, to be honest. So those three, I was like, okay, before the fixtures go to shit. So I was like, okay, I'll go for Udogi. Gusto, again, same thing like Petrovic playing the fixtures. 4.2, can't ask for anything more. He's a good option. Rich James, he should just, take the season off, go recover and whatnot. Gabriel, Arsenal defense is elite, regardless of fixture. And then on the bench, I've got Branthwaite and Richards. Now, I've owned Branthwaite, I think, similar to Tien for quite a long time, and we've experienced pains of getting bench points as well with him. He is a reliable player, Branthwaite, when needed. Everton's fixtures are kind of a mixed bag, but they do have some good fixtures. For example, if I'll show you in another scenario, maybe the 31 wildcard probably apply a bit more. But there is possibilities whenever needed. I can probably play Branthwaite when he has Burnley over a certain other defender. And also 34 if they double, you could probably play him. Richards, 3.9, Crystal Palace defender who's been playing for quite a while now. Again, just purely there for bench enabler. Lucian is in disgust over that pick, but just purely gaming 34
likely,
option.
likely for a double, and they've got
Yep.
4 greens, arguably 5 in the last 8 game weeks. So
So purely in there just for this thing. Midfield, I've got Palmer, Foden, San, Salah, Saka. I think that's going to be your standard midfield. I had to decide between playing a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2. I ended up going with the 3-5-2. Purely because I was like, I think this is what the midfield everyone's going to want in that specific week. And then up front, we got Watkins, Darwin, and I've gone for Semenyo. Now, the reason I think the GameWeek 30 wildcard I've gone like this is because people who, I'm assuming it will be people who've sold Haaland and they want to and who haven't free hitted in 29 will most likely wildcard GameWeek 30. So I've still kept the assumption that you kind of sold Haaland. So you're most likely not going to bring him back again in Arsenal. And Watkins has a good fixture against Wolves, so you probably want to play that. I did think about Solanke and trying to fit Solanke as well, but then budget issues in terms of trying to bring back Haaland next week will be a problem. So because of that, I've gone down to Semenyo from Solanke, and I went to Semenyo because of the reason that Bournemouth could have a double in 34. So I still wanted that Bournemouth player, so I was like, okay, let me just put Semenyo in there. He's not a bad option. And then next week, if you do the transfer, Watkins to probably Haaland will be your move. So you kind of book it in a move, but that's most likely the move that a lot of people would end up doing. Now, again, pros, you can get Salah back in ahead of good fixtures, and you're able to farm some team value because this is like you'll activate it that as soon as the GameWeek 29 deadline is done, you'll activate your wildcard, you'll farm that team value, until the international break is also done, so you can react to international break injuries as well.
sorry, is that 29? After
29,
between 29 to
after
30
29.
is international break, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
perfect, yeah.
So you can farm team value, whatever. So those are your pros. Your cons is you will most likely have Son and Watkins, who you might want to sell later. When you look at their fixtures, I don't think getting Haaland in immediately would be a idea in GameWeek 30 wildcard. Some may do it, but I just think it kind of made sense to delay it 1 week. So it's kind of a con because you're booking in a transfer. So if you get an injury in GameWeek 30, well, hello, -4. Then we also, the other thing is I'm not really sure when we are supposed to get confirmed news of double GameWeek 34. So that's why I've just added that. I don't know if that's a con, but I just wasn't sure. And then obviously bench boost 37 is quite far because who knows what will happen between now and 37. So that was GameWeek 30. Anything to add before I move to 31?
No, my feelings are similar between 30 and 31. My teams are similar, actually, as well, to be honest. Tien, listen, before 31.
Personally, I don't like it because, you don't want to play it in a game where you have to decide between getting or not getting Man City players. So in my wildcard, I want 2 or 3 City players, and so and booking in a transfer straight after a wildcard as well. That's a big downside for me. So, delaying 1 week in 31, then you can just load up all the players you really want without having to think about those tough fixtures between those Arsenal, and so I won 3 Arsenals, I won 2 or 3 City, and game week 30 just make it difficult. So the only plus for 30, in my opinion, is the team values. But then that sort of international break price changes or price rises are always a myth that never really eventuate anyway. And I think you might be right that we might not get the double game week 34 fixtures announcement. A lot of people think we will get it for game week 30, but there's no guarantee. So there's potential.
Uncertainty.
So potentially you can activate the wildcard like very early on before the international break, and then by the end you still have no news. Like, oh, now you're stuck. So for those reasons, I would prefer 31 over 30.
I'm personally on 31 because I think you can transfer in Son if you don't have him anyway for 30, and then wildcard in 31. And I do think that's a week where you can sell Watkins. Personally, if you need the money, maybe go to like an Isaac, because Newcastle's run from 30 basically to the end of the season is great. But yeah, I just think that extra week as well. You will avoid City and Liverpool. You will avoid City and Arsenal. The only thing with the game week 30 wildcard, if you don't go in 30, you'll miss Salah against Brighton at home. But I just think that extra week of figuring out more fixtures, and probably that's when I get rid of my Spurs players at that point, because I think from 31 to the end of the season, you can argue 32 they've got Forest, but apart from that, it's 1 week. But yeah. Luton, anything about
just one quick point there? Just one very quick point on Salah, especially for those people who, I think like you and me, we got into Saka very late. We don't have a lot of value built in him. You can actually sell Saka before Man City for Salah in 30, and then you will cut him back in 31. Or whoever,
he's got City
Son
away,
or whoever.
So
I think that's a bet. So Saka to Salah in 30, and then you get Saka back in wildcard 31. If I'm free hitting 29 and wildcarding 31, that will be I think that'll be my game week 30 move. Saka to Salah.
Cool. Lucian, any points, Lucian, on 30 before 31? You mute.
Mute.
We can't hear you. Mute. We can't hear you.
He's doing this on purpose.
we can't hear you. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Hello. Okay, he's going.
I'm trying to make. Sorry guys. I'm trying to make sense of everything, because I've got Ben Krelin's spreadsheet here and I've got our slides here, trying to compare drafts.
You should open Lego Mane's hop on hop off as well.
Oh no, not touching that, because I think Lego Mane's spreadsheet doesn't have the odds for the second fixture, right? I think right now we have to explore the possibility. Okay, first things first, my personal philosophy on playing the bench boost actually involves spreading the value. So as much as I love these drafts for bench boost of these wildcards, I would wildcard right before my bench boost. So as it stands, it is very likely if I were to bench boost in 34, I would wildcard in 32, so that I have 2 free transfers to play in 34. And at the same time, and vice versa for 37, if then I would wildcard in 35, so that I have 2 free transfers to play before 37, and then I hit the bench boost. That being said, my concept of applying the bench boost involves purchasing like not basement tier players. Yeah, not basement tier players. So I usually would eliminate the Richardses and the Brentwaits and the Dubravkas in some sense. Well, maybe not Dubravkas. Actually, Dubravkas is undervalued. But so here's the thing, right? Assuming we all play our bench boosts in 37, Yes, assuming we play the bench boost in 37, right? I'm gonna read.
I did consider this before you mentioned like the 37 bench boost when I was picking my budget enablers in terms of Brentford and all. So I did consider
Alright,
that.
so I'm a read the bench enablers you'd have on on Into, right? So first up, Arsenal wouldn't have any. Bournemouth has a 41% chance of having Brentford and Wolves, and that's why. I mean, but anyway, they're irrelevant to the wild card. Brighton potentially play Newcastle and Chelsea/Man City, so that's out the window. No one's gonna get Brighton there. Chelsea's barely there because they have Forest as their first fixture, and then it might be Brighton, it might be Arsenal, it might be Spurs. Either way, you're not gonna have a Chelsea defender. Even if I have Petrovic, for example, right? I'm not gonna be keen on having Petrovic for my wild card. Looking at that second fixture, and I can go further down the list. Fulham play City and Liverpool. Liverpool play Villa and Fulham away. Maybe Everton away. So I think that's why the Kelleher thing is a good shout. I mean, depending on how things go. Um, so City are there. No enablers. And ironically, Ryan, Man United are the ones that probably have the best enablers on the table because their two matches are Arsenal at home, which usually is high scoring anyway, and Newcastle, if not Sheffield United. So that's one potential placement. But otherwise, really, the gems are Newcastle, who play Brighton, if not, Brighton as their first game, and then Man United/Palace. So that's pretty good if they make it to the semis. Or Wolves, who play Palace in their first game, and we will all have their enablers when they're all back fit, right? In 37. I think my only concern is that they might be on the beach in 37. So, but that aside, yeah, they play Arsenal or Bournemouth at home. So really, like picking between these two wild cards, I'd say that I choose the wild cards where I use my free transfers to ditch certain players to bench boost in 34. Because if I were to wildcard in 31 or 32, I'd be bench boosting in 34. Now, this one, right, entertaining this hypothesis, things become a lot more interesting. Because if you were to bench boost in 34, right, Arsenal, okay, fine, no enablers there. Bournemouth play Villa and Wolves. Maybe. But if I go down the list and fast forward a little bit, Palace play West Ham and Newcastle at home, and that's where I'd probably invest in a cheap Palace attacker. Well, maybe not Jordan Ayew, but somewhere along those lines. And then let's see.
United and Newcastle.
Yeah, United, Newcastle, yeah, and Wolves with basically the same fixtures. So it just comes down to how much you trust those double game week fixtures, and yeah, so be it. Personally, I'd rather let the FA Cup games play out so that I see how the 37 double game weeks drop. So, as it stands, I am definitely in favor of the 30 wildcard if I were forced between the 30 and the 31 drafts.
Okay, so we'll go on to the 31 points then.
Okay.
It's on there for you now, Ryan.
All right, so game week 31. Now, before I go into this, let me just say I have no idea when I'm wildcarding. I'm very open to the whole tiki-taka idea as well, because we're free hitting in 29, and I kind of want to keep my options open. Now, 31, it's slightly different, even though it's just a couple of days apart in terms of wildcard. I'll start with the cons actually. It is a midweek deadline. So we have game week 30, midweek fixture of game week 31, and then game week 32. So 3 games in the space of a week basically. So there could be rotation. You might not get press conference news of all the teams as well. That also tends to happen during midweeks. So you might go in a bit blind for some of the fixtures. Watkins could still hurt because he does have a few fixtures after that are still pretty decent. So he could still hurt as a high EO player. You aren't able to, I say, fully load on double game week 34 players unless you're using a free hit that week, because you still want like good players from good teams, right? So if the double ends up becoming like Palace, Everton, I don't really know how much I want to wildcard so many of those players in. Like United, Newcastle, maybe, I don't know. Anyways, and then obviously again bench boost 37 is quite fast, so you might actually bench boost in 34, like Lucien is saying. So I've kind of tried to consider all of that. Pros, you get Haaland and Salah back in. You probably have a better idea of 34, 37. Still not guaranteed to have got that info by then, because Premier League YOLO, they release news when they want to release news. Could set up a squad well if you bench boost in 34, like what Lucia mentioned, and you also get to remove Watkins and Son or Spurs players ahead of a tough fixture run. Those are the pros. Now, goalkeepers are the exact same as Game Week 30. The defense has changed in the third defender. So this is where I went. I went for Region in this specific, and that's where I went with the whole Brantwaite rotation, because in Game Week 32, Region will play Villa, and you can bench him, and you can play Brantwaite in 32. Now, I don't think this third defender has to be Region specifically. It can be anyone. I just picked Region because he had like a really good run of single game week fixtures during that time. You could also pick a City defender. They also have a pretty good run, as long as you're willing to play Pep Roulette. So maybe a Nathan Ake, because he tends to get decent number of minutes out of all the Pep Roulette players. You could pick, like Lucian mentioned, I think Wolves have not a bad run. So Aint Nouri could also be another third defensive option, although I haven't analyzed like swapping, rotating defenders to see whether he kind of matches with anyone at the moment. But he's also another option because they have a decent run. So that third defender could be a couple other options. It's just that in 30, it's a bit more harder because those players that you kind of want to bring in, the likes of the City defenders who play Arsenal, and I think Wolves have a tough fixture as well, who play Villa in that specific week. So it's a bit harder in 30, whereas 31, you can kind of bring in a few more options. No Spurs defense because you're going to get rid of them anyway, so no point. And no Heung-min Son in this midfield. But instead of Heung-min Son, it's Gordon in there. Because Newcastle could double in 34. Newcastle are also top of the ticker with fixtures for that time. Till the end of the season, they have a pretty good run of fixtures. So that's why I bought in Gordon. And then you have Darwin and Haaland is back in. And because you have Gordon, I have gone slightly different to a template of what a wildcard might be, and I've kept Watkins. And the reason I've kept Watkins is you can bench him in 31 if you wanted to, and then you can start him in 32 against Brentford. You can roll the transfer, bench Gordon if you wanted to that specific week. You can go into 33 with 2 free transfers, sell Watkins to Isaac, Hoyland, whoever is doubling in 34. Out of the 2 free transfers, you use 1 transfer to get rid of Watkins. Your squad is still pretty fine because you don't have Spurs players, so you don't have to worry. And then you go into 34 with the 2 free transfers. Kind of satisfies Lucian's criteria of having 2 free transfers in 34 as well. So you, and then handle whatever 34 throws at you. That's the kind of concept why I kept Watkins. And also because Watkins keeps rising in price, and I have like 0.4, 0.5 that I am not sure that I want to sell him just yet. I need to be very committed to selling a player who is about to hit 250 points in FPL, who is on course to hit 250 points in FPL. So I better be damn sure whoever I'm bringing in is good. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, just because that's it. Like, I wouldn't have to sell him on a wild card, but we're at the stage now where if you're behind, like I'm at like 800k, like you got to try and find gains. And having Watkins at this stage, he's just not going to get any gains. And I think when he goes in 31, he's got City away. You're not expecting a lot. Brentford at home. Brentford are leaking goals left, right, and centre. Arsenal away. Bournemouth at home. Chelsea at home. Brighton away. Liverpool at home. Palace away. You could jump on an Isaac. You could jump on a Darwin, which is on this page. You could stick with Solanke and go 3-5-2 and have more of a power midfield. That's why I love this time of the season. This is where I think we're going to see slightly different squads that could really come up well. But my thoughts aren't much different from what I said earlier. I think 30 if you're desperate to have Liverpool in, if you've not free hit. If you're free hitting 29, you probably got to go in 30. I haven't seen actually a draft of all these people who have like 6 or 7 players in 29, I don't know what their team looks like in 30. Because I know like so in 30, Spurs have Luton. So people who tripled up on Spurs, they don't need to wildcard in 30 because they'll have 3 against Luton. Watkins, so Villa, if they've got 3 Villa as well, they've got Wolves, so maybe they can wait another game week. Who
West Ham,
Luton,
Newcastle.
West Ham have got Newcastle, which isn't ideal. Luton are away at Spurs, which isn't ideal. If we just go back to the slide of the common 28 players, who would play in 29? Brentford. Who have Brentford got in 30?
Oh no, wait. United.
Not ideal. So yeah, I just feel if you're not free hitting in 29, I'd be surprised if you're not free hitting. If you're not wildcard in 30. But for others, I just think 31. Yeah, you don't have Liverpool, but you can avoid, like Tien said earlier, like I don't have a money in Saka, so I could sell him in 30 and wildcard him back in 31, and have Salah as my one transfer in that week, which is what I'm looking to do. I might take a -4 this week on Maddison, because then on the other side of the free hit, Maddison's at home to Luton, and then I wildcard in 31. Or even 32 if I want, but I want to get on Liverpool because they've got Sheffield United in 31. So I'd be real surprised if people are not wildcarding like before Sheffield United go to Anfield. So yeah, I think 30 if you're not free hitting is almost a must, and a 31 is better. But also, unless you're stacked up on Liverpool, like you're probably going in 31, unless you can hold it for the final tactic, the tiki-taka, which we'll touch on after you guys give your opinions on. Any additional opinions on the 31 wildcard that we've not touched on already, Tien?
Not much. Just I think Lucian made a very good point earlier that if you are wildcard 31. And you know the fixture landscape by then, what 34 looks like. Try to think about bench boosting in 34 instead of 37, because it can be quite beneficial in that. Like of course you're not gonna have all 15 doublers like 37, but from my experience, having all doublers do not guarantee all the points anyway, and you're waiting a long time and you're making transfers, for your bench players a long way away is can cause more harm than good. So that is something that people should really think about.
Yep. Lucian, any more points before we go on to your tiki-taka tactic?
Oh, I'm so glad that's mine. But yeah, on I think the only merit that I see on the 31 wildcard draft is the dates of 31. So hold on, I just need to have the calendar load real quick because right, wildcarding on 31 is reliable in the sense that the fixtures, like in terms of calendar days, 31 is just after, like 3 days after game week 30. So number one, you will definitely get a lot of price rises out in that busy fixture period. But more importantly, 31, 32, and 33 are 3 game weeks all compressed into 1 week. And I feel that, like, it's one thing where we perceive things as just, 3 game weeks, okay, 3 game weeks come and go. But when 7 days contains 7 to 8 days contains 3 game weeks, right? We can see, put it this way. When we get news on injuries and whatnot, right? If let's say you played a wild card between 2 really long game weeks, like say between 34 and 35, you wait 7 days, right? there's a lot of information that will change things. But if you play a wild card and a very certain and a very good wild card with conviction, you play it in a very short game week, then it is very unlikely that some late news or leaks will mess you up. And I think that that's really the power of playing a wild card in a game week with very short turnaround. So that's the merit. That's the merit I see in 31 as opposed to 30. Because if you do it in 30, like you'd have to endure four short game weeks in calendar days, and yeah, that would really have too many things that will throw a spanner in the works.
Okay, so we'll move on to the potential one that I mentioned earlier, that it is possible to, if you're not free hitting in 29, to push that wild card back into a tiki-taka. Now, even though I don't have the bench boost, I still think a wild card in 35 or 36, preparing for 37, could be the way to go. So, Lucian, I think this is the point that you've been looking at potentially.
Yeah. Right. So, tiki taka has been my traditional strategy because, yeah, really, I mean it in the most sincere sense. I mean, there have been seasons where I did play the free hit in the game week with the most blanks, and quite frankly, this time round, I just do not see the merit of having 11 players as such. I think if we try and jog our memory back like season per season, right? There's always a premium player that is likely to explode um in blank game weeks. And more often than not, someone like, I think there was this one particular season where Salah got like two goals and assists in the blank game week, and literally everyone else's scores were irrelevant. So, I would admit that I played my free hit to have 11, but my scores weren't that much greater than other teams who had seven to eight players with hits. Really, it's just not that different. So, to navigate a blank game week, as long as you don't take hits, you'll be fine. And so, Tiki Taka, right, as paying homage to the incredibly intricate style of play that Pep uses, where literally every man counts. Every person is a cog of a machine that is constantly moving and has their roles in separate situations. You really have to use your squad of 15. And that's where I'm sort of like quaking in my boots, relying on Charlie Taylor from the bench, because he will definitely play his part over the next few game weeks or so. This also applies to the likes of my Semenyo and my Justin Kluivert and my McAtee. So it's gonna be some nerve-wracking stuff. However, all of this only happened because I had a period where I had the three most expensive Man City players, as well as Salah, as well as TAA. And so, now that I've downgraded TAA to have double Arsenal defense, I have money to spend. But that's my personal story. Tiki Taka as a concept basically requires you to save on everything. Really, just use your free transfers and your tactical news to basically make a firm statement that blank game week 29 is overrated, first and foremost, and then use the power of saving those chips to slam it 34, 37. This, of course, is in conjunction with a very special case here where 34 is going to be a potential double as well as a blank. So you are definitely like trusting your players now. I think this particular strategy is going to be very attractive for managers who have a lot of value, like saved up in 4 to 5 core players. So if you are a manager like myself that, I bought Haaland at 13.9, I bought Foden at really cheap, right? I've got, lots of value stored up in a whole host of other players. But the secret ingredient is, like Tian and Rob and myself, we bought Saka late. We bought him at a high price. We can afford to sell him. Maybe get him to rise a couple of million or so. Maybe not. Maybe he might drop, right? And just buy him back at par. So with a scapegoat, we have some money to spread our funds throughout the rest of the tricky fixture period. And so long as we survive Liverpool against Man City this week, I mean, wouldn't we want to hold triple Man City regardless of fixtures throughout the next period? Like, even if, let's say, you were to ignore the um blank, right, in 29, and the difficult fixture against Arsenal in 30. Like, City after that, right, have powerful fixtures against Villa at home, Palace away, Luton in 33. Okay, fine. Maybe everyone will be wildcarding in 33 and everyone will own Luton. But still, the fact that everyone, like, we will be just sitting there, not taking hits, very important emphasis, not taking hits, trusting our core players while spreading the Bukayo Saka funds around. And yeah, just waiting for 34 to slam our free hit, slam the wild card, slam the bench boost on 37. And the best bit about this is that we can swap it all around. We can wildcard in 33 just like everyone else, and then we can bench boost in 34, and then we can free hit in 37. And who knows, if the 37 double game week looks underwhelming, we can free hit in 38, which is arguably the best point of the season to actually use single game week fixtures to have bombastic scores. I know Harry Kane isn't available anymore, but there will be other heroes in game week 38 that will definitely set us up very well for a free hit when everyone else is exhausted. So that is tiki taka, where you have all your chips, play it at the back, and yeah, you just be very careful for now.
Yeah, I think covered really well. Just again, I could hold on to that length. The negative for me is I think it's just too late. I think you're going to a wild card in 31. You can jump on like Newcastle, a couple of double game weekers for 34. Get your triple Arsenal, Liverpool in there. I think if you're wildcarding so late, you're only getting the benefits of that for that 1 week to bench boost. But because that's going to be such a big double game week, if you do have the bench boost, you could play it regardless. I don't think you have to set up specifically for that time. So I just feel as though it's too late to reap the rewards of a wild card, whilst you'll be wildcarding players in that a lot of people already have and bench boosting. If you've got your bench boost and you play in 37, everyone's boosting similar players. So I just think it's just a touch too late. Ryan, what's your thoughts on the?
I'm open to the whole dead end 34, wildcard 35. It all depends on what happens in the FA Cup, to be honest. I think that's going to kind of like make an impact on where I decide to go. Now, obviously, I am in a situation this week where I have like a backline that has Doty and Gabriel, which is fine, and I have a third defender problem of like I have Porro, I have Branthwaite, and I forgot I have Region. Now, Branthwaite and Region are not good this week, and if Porro is also not good this week, and if he's injured and he's out, then I'm wondering if I should like bring in someone. Now this will be for a hit. If I should bring in someone like a Gusto and kind of like get that fixture against Newcastle, which is okay this week, but get like the Burnley fixture as well. That kind of sets me up in a situation where if I really wanted to not wildcard in 31, I could not do it because I'll have enough of like players as well, and it also helps me like free up funds to try and get Salah in 30. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. So I'm open to the idea and the concept of dead end 34, wildcard 35. But yeah, FA Cup might have an impact on where I go.
Yeah, Tien, any additional thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think for me, because I don't have the bench boost, I am a lot more flexible. But yeah, Lucian covered it really well. Like, for those who still have the bench boost and want to play the bench boost in 37, and that team is reasonably well set up for this period. Like, obviously you're not going to be perfect for 28, 29. And 34, you will have to make sacrifice for each of those game weeks. But as long as it's not too much, like Lucian mentioned earlier, you cover the main players for 29, for example, and the double 34 as well. Like you could sort of try to minimize the damage between now and 34, and then it just go like bang, throw everything in the last few game weeks, with a really good wild card. Because by then most people would have used the wild card, right? So you set up the team whatever way you want, because you'll be on your own there. And yeah, you mentioned that most people will have a decent bench put in 37 regardless. I think there's still benefit of doing it so close, because teams might be wrapping up their titles or being on the beach or whatever. You can switch your whole team around while people will be panicking, making free transfer, taking hits to bring in a bench players for their bench boost, for example. So there's merit there to do it that way, and it could go really big. You've seen like double game week 37 in the past where the bench boost like give like a huge gain. So it's quite possible. Personally, for me, if I was to free hit in 29, then I'll just have a floating wild card there, and I'll just do it whenever I want, because I don't have the bench boost to worry about, right? So I don't need to do it in 30, 31. If my teams are looking alright with my free transfers, I'll just keep it. I'll just play it wherever, and yeah, basically flow with the just go with the flow basically. And so that's kind of a tiki taka, but in a slightly different way. Um, but at the end of the day, I think for the last, I don't know, 1 hour and 45 minutes or so, everything we've touched on, there's no perfect solution, right, for any team. Like whichever strategy, whichever pathway you pick, there's pros and cons. There's merit for each of the strategy we mentioned, and there's downside for each as well. So I think the best way to do it is to constantly monitor the sort of the fixtures situation, and using those planner tool like FPL.team or Plan FPL or whatever. Always try to look a few game weeks ahead to see how the team is shaping up, and then try to adjust, because the last thing you want is to be locked in with something, and then situation changes, upsets in the cup or whatever, injuries and everything else, and you still fixated with like, oh no, I have to do it because that was my plan. Then I think that's probably gonna end badly. So yeah, be flexible and reactive to um, any changes that are happening in the next few weeks, and surely things going to happen, international break and FA Cups and Pep Roulette and whatever, you name it, right? Everything's going to change a lot in the next few weeks, and the people that are active and proactive, I think will come out ahead.
Yeah, great. So any more points before we finish up on captaincy? No. So captaincy, I can see I've got Solanke and I've got Morris and I've got a little Saka head popping out of the back of the sea there for captaincy. Me personally, now the only downside here is his dodgy knee, but he did play the last game. And he did say he thinks he'd be fine for the up and coming 2. The problem with this problem that he has with his knee is it's a recurring one that isn't quite solved yet. Is it enough to take me off captaincy for him? No. If I was not free hitting in 29 and I didn't have Solanke, would it sway me to a Morris transfer, who will have 3 fixtures, and to give him the captaincy? Potentially. Because I don't think look, Haaland is always a captaincy option. Always. But it's away to Liverpool. It shouldn't be a situation where he's walking away with a hat-trick. It could be, because it's Haaland and it's Manchester City. But with the fixtures that Bournemouth have got, like, even if Solanke's out, like, are you not looking at like a Neto captaincy for 2 potential clean sheets? Because that could be massive, because he usually takes home the bonus points as well. But yeah, I think for me it's an absolute lock on for Solanke unless we hear more about that knee. And then we've got Morris. If you don't have Solanke and you're worried about that knee, he might be the second choice. And then in terms of single game weekers, Saka's on there because one, he's got high ownership. He's always got high ownership as Saka. And Brentford at home because Brentford, I said earlier, like the goals that they're leaking, they are awful. With I think even from game week 20. So I don't always look like the whole season, right? You form and chunks and things like that. So if we go back to just game week 20 and we're going into game week 28, so the last 7 game weeks, Brentford are just behind Sheffield United for goals conceded. And we're talking about Sheffield United getting smashed and left, right, and centre, and how bad they are and how they're the worst. Burnley conceding loads of goals. Luton are losing game after game after game. Brentford are the second worst for goals conceded. Now, this would usually be an argument of like quality versus quantity. So if Bournemouth were playing Luton and Villa away, I still would be tempted to go for that captaincy because it's a double game week and you've got 2 bites of the cherry. Pun intended, because he plays for the Cherries. But if you're worried about effective ownership or you think a player could get a good haul, if he's not sick, because he was sick, he came off. I was good. He was my captain last week, and he was beating Haaland at half time, and he came off. So he did beat Haaland, which was good for me, but only by a point. But, you know, you're looking at the team that is... So it's just unfortunate. Bournemouth are playing the worst team by a mile. But yeah, if I had to go for a single game weeker, Saka would be my number 1 choice there. But for me, it's a clear Solanke captaincy. Ryan, any people? Are you on Solanke as well? Anyone you're looking at?
Well, I'm on Solanke because I don't have Morris. And I'm like, if you have a double game week striker, just captain your double game week striker. If you happen to have both double game week strikers, then if you're holding rank, Captain Solanke. If you're chasing rank, Captain Morris, I guess. At this point, I'm like, I feel like it's a game week worthy enough of willing to take a risk. At least that's how I'm thinking about it. Because I think Luton are the more attacking team. Bournemouth have the better fixtures. That's how I kind of look at it. So Solanke could score a double-digit haul. He could also blank. And he could also do what he does regularly, which is like 1 goal. So single digits, like 7, 8 points, 9 points per game. So yeah, I feel like these are one of those game weeks where it's kind of gifted to you and you're like, take a punt on it. These are one of the very few weeks where if you're chasing rank, it might be a week to actually try and take a gamble, is what I'm thinking. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Solanke's 26.4% owned, so he's not going to go. He's going to get you lots of points anyway. I don't think he's in it, but maybe in the higher ranks.
Yeah, in the higher ranks, it's a bit more.
He's going to be the big one. But yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Tien, any who's your captain idea or anyone you want to throw in the mix?
So I have Solanke and it's on Solanke at the moment. Yeah, the features are probably the best you can ask of of any double. And you mentioned the effective ownership. At in the sort of top 10k, top 100ks, I'm thinking his EO is gonna be closer to 200% because everybody is gonna own him, and quite a few people will be triple captaining him as well. So don't be surprised if he's getting close to the 200% mark. Yeah, so if you play the EO game, then he's the obvious choice. But I think he's the obvious choice because I mean it'll be super unlucky for him to not score 1 goal over 2 games. Right? Obviously, if he's injured and come up, at halftime after the first game, then there's nothing we can do about it. But if he plays both games, it'll be super unlucky for him to not score a single goal over 2 games. And if he scores a single goal over 2 games and it's low scoring games, he's gonna be on 10 points because he's gonna get bonus, right? So a double-digit return is generally our benchmark for captain, right? It's not bad at all. Yeah, Morris, if you want to chase, if you want to take like a slightly puntier pick, and yeah, as you said, he can't disregard the like a Saka because he can hold as well in any game. But yeah, I'm just gonna play the numbers game. Solanke, my captain.
It's the fixtures game. Like it is the two bet. Like the only debate is like what's better, home to Luton or home to Burnley, and that is it. That is the only way that this double game week could get any better for a team. Lucian, any thoughts about the captaincy? Semenya, is he in the the mixer for you? If I had Semenya, because I don't think you've got Solanke, I think he's an option.
Yeah, rock and a hard place, isn't it? Well, actually, the decision point for myself is whether to take a -4. So right now my situation is that in 29 I have exact money to turn Semenyo and Saka into Tony and Son. It's beautiful. 0.0 in the bank. If I do nothing this week, I'm gonna captain Bukayo Saka. And then my 2 free transfers will set me up perfectly for 29. Tiki taka all the way. If I take a -4, I can buy Semenyo this week, no trouble, captain him, and then I take a -4 to have the 2 exact same players in 29 anyway. So I think I'm gonna mull over it. I've left the captaincy on Saka. And I guess a -4 for a double game week. It's a -2. But if I'm selling Semenyo to buy Solanke,
Why not just captain Semenyo? He looks like he's nailed that side slot on, and he's one of the more favoured to play both games 90 minutes.
it's not, well, you just have to look at the nature of his goals. Like they've not exactly been, him finishing at the far post from a cross or something like that. He's basically been taking shots from outside, or he thrives on the counter. So a lot of Semenyo's goals and goal contributions have come in transitions, especially in this last game where they were stuck, right? They were stuck 1-0 against, who did they play?
Burnley.
Burnley? No,
Burnley,
no.
Burnley. On the counter it came. Yeah, Burnley he cut in on the left hand shot.
Which is what he always
Yeah.
does.
And I mean, and that's all in transition, but that was only because they sat on the 1-0 lead for so long. And honestly, if you looked at it at halftime, and halftime 1-0, Clivert. I have Justin Clivert, by the way,
Yeah.
and I see that, and then I see Semenyo on the yellow card with 45 minutes. I was not optimistic. I was not, you know. And when Semenyo gets that goal with the 2 bonus, I don't know how to feel. So honestly, right, as a Semenyo owner since game week 8, I can tell you the true experience of owning Semenyo is to not expect him to play 90 minutes at all. I think the game against Burnley was the first time he actually had 90 minutes, and even that extensive thread by FPL Schofield, our Bournemouth expert on Twitter, right, already expects him to play like 140 to 160 minutes. And that's how we should expect it. Yes, the spot is his, but Bournemouth do have quite a lot of backup in Sinistera, and they can push Christie to 10. They can have Tavernier play on the right side. So for me, actually, the deciding factor is whether I think Bournemouth will get a penalty. I do believe that penalties is what will undo Sheffield United in particular, because I don't think I don't think Sheffield United themselves concede a lot of space centrally unless it's in transition. Rather, they are just beaten on the flanks very easily. And then I just foresee, think about it, right? When was the last time Bournemouth scored from a cross? So it really is all about either Solanke finishing from his trademark side heel flick behind the back thing that he does so well, or they concede a penalty and Dominic Solanke steps up and scores. Yeah, and
The dream.
I just can't say the same about Luton. I'm actually quite optimistic that Luton will keep them out, but I just see this particular double game week as very underwhelming. So I'm still 50-50 on the -4.
I'm excited, you see, because I'm free hitting in 29. I've been building to this. I got 4. I'll have 4. I'll have 4 double game weekers. So I'm looking forward to it. Well, that was a full guide into our thoughts, plans, feelings for 28 and all the chips and stuff. So good luck to everyone. Just a reminder about the deadline. It's an earlier one again. So it's 7 p.m. my time. So that's like 11 a.m. UK time. And I think what's that, 9 o'clock your time, guys, in Oz, or 10 o'clock?
10 o'clock.
10 p.m.
Yeah, so just bear in mind about the deadline being a little bit earlier this week, and you don't want to miss out on that one. So yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, take care and have a good one.